So this is just a quick preface for my video. Apparently QuickTime Player, which is what I've been using to film this, has some weird thing where it kind of cuts off and screws up the first second or so of your video. So every single time I start a new clip, the audio is a little screwed up. So I'm going to type in what it says. Anyways, sorry for the issues. This video a while ago, but I played in another tournament and I realized the video wasn't quite what it needed to be. And then I kept kind of putting it off because I decided I would just play with the warp a little longer and really come up with a full review. So anyways, this is my review of the Evo Warp Pro in the Whip 3 preference option. Experience with the Evo Warp Pro over the summer so far. I got it when it came out. I've been using extensively. I've practiced at least 2 hours every day just about, and then I have box practice twice a week. I've had field practice twice a week, and I've actually had 3 field lacrosse tournaments that I've used it in, and I plan to continue using it for the rest of the summer. What everybody else keeps saying is a con, or everyone else is concerned about the Warp Pro. So one of the biggest concerns a lot of people have is catching. The old warps you couldn't catch very well, and in Rob Pennell's video he said that you could catch very well, but I've seen other people say that you can't. I personally experienced that you can catch ridiculously well with this Warp Pro. I guess a mesh stick might catch a little better, but I've never had an issue with dropping passes. If I ever dropped a pass, it was either because it was a bad pass, I couldn't see it, or because I screwed up. But as far as I'm concerned, the Warp Pro catches just as well as any mesh stick. Concern a lot of people had was hold, in terms of just like, you know, toe drag hold and things like that. And I actually found that the Warp Pro has plenty enough hold. I can toe drag one-handed behind the back, so I can pretty much do anything I want in terms of hold, and I haven't experienced any difficulties with that throwing fakes or anything like that. I think that's partially attributed to these larger diamonds in the center, and it's very, very soft. Not really a good test, but it kind of comes up here, and all 3 of these shooting strings are kind of tight, so as it comes up here, it kind of catches on that bottom shooting string and allows you to have a lot of vertical hold. Warp Pro actually does kind of lack in would be, I guess what you could call horizontal hold, or mainly mesh calls ball retention, and I really like that term of ball retention. So what that's looking at is right as the ball sways back and forth in the pocket, how well it gets hold, and how well the ball is held into the pocket. And I think that's really important because, right, in a game, hold can be important like this if you're throwing fakes, or if you dodge through traffic and do a toe drag, or if you like do a face dodge, bring it underneath and bring it back up, or if you go back to shoot. But for the most part, I think ball retention is the most important, because as you're dodging through players, as they get a hit on your stick or a check on your stick or on your head, the ball normally comes out of the side. It doesn't roll, it doesn't roll all the way out. It just kind of gets knocked out of the side. And so one thing with the Warp Pro is it's not the best in that area. For the most part, it's fine, but I'd say a general mesh stick is a little better. And actually, Sam on Instagram, Big Sam20, I believe, he has some good videos of his demonstration between a mesh stick and a warp when he has the ball rattle back and forth. And to be honest, my warp's a little bit more broken in than his, and the pocket actually sways with the ball a lot better than in his video. In his video, it's kind of coming out of the channel and kind of coming onto this hard part, but in mine, for the most part, it stays really in the soft channel, and I think that's because it's broken in more. But there is still some issues with that. One reason why is because, at least one reason I believe why, is if you look at that channel, there's really not much of a channel. I mean, it still kind of has that general arc, but generally a mesh stick would have a little bit tighter of a channel. And so Warrior didn't really think they needed a channel, at least this is what I assume. They're kind of relying on the fact that this center channel is super soft and the ball's going to want to stay in that, and then these side portions are very thickly knit. There's a ton of strands, and it's also a different material that's a lot harder, and so this isn't nearly as soft. As you can kind of see, the whole thing moves at once, whereas this is a lot softer. So what that does is these kind of act like bumpers in a bowling alley, and this is where the ball wants to stay. How well it passes and shoots, I figured I'd just talk about the Whip 3, which is what this warp is. A lot of people on my team have been getting the Whip 1. Denver Elite Box, we've all been getting a lot of warps, and so there's actually a good amount of people on our team now that have these. And I've been using this probably the longest on my team, and everybody else keeps getting the whip 1. I got the whip 3 because I know I use a good bit of whip for outside shots, and I've actually found that the warps are fairly similar. I haven't extensively used the whip 1, but it seems like for the most part the whip 1 really isn't going to be that much less whip. In fact, with passing, most people can pick up my stick and throw with the whip 3, and most people can pick up the whip 1 and throw with it just fine. The biggest difference, I would say, is on outside shots, and really, if you're really cranking a shot, and if you kind of, based on your mechanics, you can kind of tell that the whip 1 is more so for that kind of attackman that doesn't really have a ton of whip in their stick, and the whip 3 is more for a midfielder that really plants and rips. And actually the whip 3 should give you plenty enough whip for anyone. I think the whip 3 is the perfect option for anyone thinks that they actually use whip, because I thought I used an average amount of whip, and this had a tiny bit more whip than I wanted at first, but after it broke in, it was perfect, and now this is just about the average whip that I would use in any of the rest of my sticks. Pro is actually really good at shooting. I found that just about every shot I take is fine. I've taken behind the backs, around the world, shovel shots, everything, and pretty much right after I got it, I felt 100% confident doing whatever shot I wanted. Whether that be a regular overhand shot, kind of a little more over the top, pulling through on an overhand shot, sidearm shots, pretty much every type of shot was just perfect. The only thing is underhand shots, it seemed to really, like, the ball would really hook in there and have a little bit too much whip and kind of pull a little above the bar. But I mean, for the most part it was fine, and I think that's kind of dialed down because now that I use it, either I got adjusted to that whip or the whip has slowly dialed down as I used it more and more, because I've used it in game and taken underhand shots and it's just fine. Passing is 100% perfect. Every time it goes right where I want it to. The only time it's ever not exactly where I want it to go, I can tell it's because of me. The only issue is there have been, I guess, 3 times since I've got it, and only 3 times since I've got it, and I've been using this like crazy, where the ball would kind of fall out onto this hard portion and go flying and just way over the other person's stick. That happened once in game and twice in practice, and it was kind of embarrassing, but it's only happened 3 times since I've used it, and I really wouldn't worry about it too much. Now, if that's kind of a concern to you, maybe that might be a disadvantage to the warp, as occasionally the ball does slip out and things like that can happen, but for me, I really don't care that much. The biggest thing is if you kind of know that you kind of play a little spastically, I guess you could say, where like you're kind of running up the field and throwing like weird passes out of nowhere, then it might be a little weird. But I mean, even if you throw shovel shots behind the back, really quick sticks, anything, it should be fine. Like, I throw all sorts of passes and I've never had an issue with any style pass. The only time that's ever happened is just when I catch it, turn, and just plant my feet and pass, and somehow it kind of slipped out. Misconception in the lacrosse community, I guess, is just about how mesh works. So a lot of people think that if you string up the pocket and you pound it in a couple times and you're using hero mesh or string king, your pocket's never going to change. That's not going to happen because your sidewall strings can slowly tighten over time. No matter how much you tighten them, they'll slightly change. The pocket itself will slightly change, and that's just because the physical fibers, even though the fibers themselves might not be stretching, the fibers together in that knit are stretching together as a knit. And so what that means is the fibers, when they're woven, might be like this, or might be like this, but slowly as you play, the fibers kind of tighten together, and eventually they will lock into place. And that's what I found with a lot of meshes, is that, like hero mesh especially, after a certain amount of time, it will not stretch or change anymore at all, but it does do a ton of stretching in those first, like in that first month or couple weeks. And that's the same with the Evo Warp Pro. Even though allegedly the strings will never stretch themselves, over time the pocket will change a little bit, and it'll change a little bit to your preference actually. So if you play a certain way, the pocket will actually change and shift like that, because I've strung up defined low pockets that kind of shift into a mid-high pocket, because that's kind of how I play, or at least that's how I played more at that time. And then, this pocket, it had a ton of whip for me at first. Well, not a ton, but a little bit more than I wanted. And, if I was doing a straight overhand shot, it'd be like half a foot below the bar every time. But as I just kind of played with it more and more and more, now it hits right at that top corner every single time, as long as I'm shooting consistently. So that's one thing to know, is even though it may seem a little off at first, if it just feels a little off but you think you can work with it, if you just dial it in and just keep working with it, odds are the knit will physically stretch and the strings will kind of tighten up, and you'll have a perfect pocket. Into my more serious complaints. First complaint that everyone seems to be talking about is the D diamond shape holes, which you can kind of see that they are D-shaped in the sense that one side of the diamond pulls out a little further than the other. And one place you can actually really notice this, and this is the only place where it bothers me, is the bottom hole, right? It's got the big bottom hole for holding the ball. I don't know if you can quite tell, but it actually does shift the ball to a side because all of the diamonds in the center, and actually all the diamonds, are slightly D-shaped. And so if you look at it from the front dead on, you can kind of tell that the ball's leaning to one side more than the other, and that's just because of the D-shaped pocket. But because the actual channel itself is symmetrical and the side that's hard is in the exact same place on both sides, I haven't noticed the ball releasing slightly differently. It might release slightly differently, but no one has been able to tell it. Like if you pass or shoot, no matter what you do, there's almost zero chance you'll notice it at all. So that's kind of nice. My biggest concern, durability. I was really hoping this could last a year, and I do not think at all that this will last an entire year from when I bought it. First reason why is because the Kevlar, what used to be Kevlar, I don't know what it is now, is starting to rip a little bit, or not rip, peel off from the plastic. So I don't really know if you can tell. I'll try to add some photos in, and maybe on this side it's a lot more obvious. Oh my god. You can see that the Kevlar is actually peeling off from the plastic. Now I assume that at a certain point it'll just stop peeling off and it won't matter anymore, but hopefully this doesn't matter, because what I'm assuming is that, right, this pocket was laid on there and then they melted the head around it. So what I'm thinking is, at least on these sides, right, the fabric goes down into the head, and so unless the physical head breaks here, then you'll be fine. And I'm assuming that's the case with the bottom, is the mesh will kind of peel off a little bit where it accidentally got molded to the head, but then because the netting goes down into these holes and went straight down, I don't think it'll matter too much after a certain point. One thing that is going to do is lower the consistency. Another worry for me is if you look up top, some of the strings are kind of fraying and stretching, and right around here it's a little concerning just because it's a little uneven, and I'll show some photos of that. And then my biggest concern outside of the bottom part where it's peeling off would be on either side. If I can kind of show you the connection point in between both. Oh geez, sorry. The connection point in between the Kevlar material, whatever bonds the head to the pocket and the actual pocket itself, right there on both sides is kind of fraying a little bit, and it looks like it might be about to rip, and that's definitely a little concerning for me. And then another area is, I guess, just at the bottom of the big diamond. Oh my god. I don't know, you can't really tell, but it looks like it might be stretching a little bit, and my worry is just that for now it's fine, but over time it looks like that might be a weak area. But my biggest concern is just that it's starting to fray at that connection point, and that seems a little iffy to me, and just kind of the overall slight looseness in the strings and areas where it looks like it might be ripping. I don't think that those will be a concern in the short run. I think that this head will still last you a very long time, but I don't think it'll last you that year, which is what I was hoping for. Buying the Warrior Evo Warp Pro, it's kind of a yes and no depending on your situation. First off, if you're considering buying it because you want to buy it, I 100% recommend you buy it. Now, if you're thinking, I don't know, is it really worth it? I really like my mesh stick and I can get it strung up really well. Then you probably want to stick with your mesh stick if you're more comfortable with that, because mesh sticks are very good now. People can string them very well, and if you yourself or someone new, you can string your stick really well and you can rely on them to string it anytime you need a stick strung, then that's perfect. But some of you guys out there have to rely on places like Monkey Sports, Dick's Sporting Goods, and stuff like that. And if you find yourself having to rely on them, you know, or if you have to ship in your head, that might be a little bit of a hassle, so then you might want to look at the Warrior Evo Warp Pro. Another reason you might want to look at the Warp Pro is just because, right, if you do have to give it to those places and your top string breaks or your sidewall string breaks and you don't know how to restring it, then you have to send it back to them just to get your top string replaced, and that might kind of be a hassle for some of you guys. And I know for a lot of players, they really hate having to deal with their strings, Now for me, I always kind of found it fun having to troubleshoot my stick before a game, but I know for a lot of people that can be a real issue, and this is 100% consistent. Once you get it dialed in, you don't have to adjust it at all. The biggest reason I wouldn't recommend it outside of if you don't really like it too much is just if the durability does turn out to be an issue. But as for now, I've been using it since the day after it came out, and the durability is 100% fine. So if you're kind of on the fence about it, figure out which side you're leaning. If you're leaning more towards getting one, I say get one, and if you're leaning more towards just string jobs and just things that you're more used to, I recommend just sticking with that. That was the review. If you have any questions or comments, please put them in the comment section below. You can also find me on Instagram, 5280_lacrosse. If you have any questions, you can DM me or put it in any of the comments there. I'd love to respond, and if you have any recommendations for me, or just anything you want to say, please do so, and also like and subscribe if you liked it.